Hi, I'm Rena, and welcome to Biopic, a podcast story. This is a podcast where we dissect the good, bad, ugly, and absurd of this specific genre of motion picture, the biopic. If you want to learn more about us, our scoring system, and how we choose movies, please check out our special introductory episode, Introduction: Who Are We and What Are We Doing? This is not one of our regularly scheduled weekly podcasts. It's an extra that we're throwing out there with some bits that we cut from episode 23, The Pride of the Yankees, and episode 24, St. Joan. This is some material that we deemed to be irrelevant host banter, or cut for time, and because it was digressive or repetitive. Most of this will sound, without context, like we are having a conversation in non sequiturs. So if this is your first time listening to Biopic, a podcast story, you should probably download one of our regular episodes or our introduction episode to get a better sense of who we are and what we're all about. I would highly recommend anything from episode 10 onwards because it took a while to figure out the sound quality and find our voice. Enjoy, and thank you for spending some of your time with us.
And save for the last 5 minutes, I was so furious the whole time. And I felt like I was watching The Passion of the Christ, which is another movie that is deeply manipulative and not good. And twists you into thinking you're seeing something good. I was furious the entire time I was watching this. Okay, sorry.
In terms of being sentimental, and that, I am a big mush sometimes. When I was at Columbia, which we see on here, there was a screening of Casablanca where everyone in the audience kept laughing at the sentimental parts, and I was aghast. It was my first time watching Casablanca all the way through on a big screen, and when I was walking into the dormitory, the security guard asked me, "Why do you look so sad?" And I said, "I went to watch a screening of Casablanca and everybody laughed at the sentimental parts." And he said to me, "Well, what do they know?" And I said, "Well, they got in here.
They know a thing or two." But this is hagiography to a level, like, I'm going to quote Saturday Night Live right now from a billion years ago and say that this movie makes Gandhi look like a pedophile.
I think you're judging it according to being in more cynical times, but I know there's other stuff where I could be on the flip side of that.
I'm coming in hot. I feel real angry about this.
The categories that people actually care about include Best Picture, Best Director, and the acting ones. We care about screenplay if it's Spike Lee getting Best Screenplay as a nod of embarrassment at Green Book beating Black Klansman when Driving Miss Daisy beat Do the Right Thing. Just, wow, nothing changes. But in general,
this was, as you said, nominated for a number of awards. One won, which was for Best Editing.
A category that nobody cares about. Sorry, not editors.
True.
Really?
Not true. Yes. Couple of reasons. It is often considered a bellwether for what is going to win Best Picture. When, so it's often kind of like a hand-in-hand award. And it's notable when something else wins for Best Editing over the Best Picture winner. It's an interesting category because often it will honor technique in a way that maybe some of the other categories don't. And I obviously have a favorite editor who is Thelma Schoonmaker, Scorsese's Thelma Schoonmaker. Martin Scorsese's editor, who he's worked with since he was part of the crew making the Woodstock documentary. And also, other interesting piece of trivia about editors, a lot of the early editors were women because they would have to sew the film together. That was obviously like a lady thing because it involved a lot of like very small handwork. Okay, that's my speech on editing. and there's a bunch of kids trading baseball cards. One of them has an Honus Wagner card, which is the most rare and expensive baseball card that you can get your hands on, and just traded it away. And I was like, there's your whole future. And then, if you hadn't traded that card away and just stuck to baseball card collecting, you wouldn't have caught Lou Gehrig's disease. And,
ALS is I know.
I'm just being a dick. I'm just being a dick right now because I hated this.
I thought it was funny, like, even as a non-baseball person, knowing what these cards are, like, worth now. And
they were, you think about, like, those kids were all like, I have to keep working here or else I'm going to have to go work in a factory. So yeah, they were probably all, like, working real hard. I know this was past the time of child labor.
And I remembered that in A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, Francine Nolan thought she had it made when she was getting $20 a week right before World War I. So it's plausible. When you look at pictures of people in their 40s from then, they look way older than like 40-year-old people now. But it was still overkill because his parents look 60 and they have a kid who's supposed to be like grade school aged. In skimming the like making of book, I ran a text search for the actress's name, and I couldn't find anything. So that goes to my theory that they were casting older people to try to make Gary Cooper look comparatively younger in the college age scenes, because I don't know what they could do in terms of youthing makeup.
Yeah.
Back then. Probably very, very little.
Yeah. And I don't know if you're familiar with this Francis Ford Coppola like movie called Jack, where Robin Williams plays a child who's aging quickly. But
it's so bad. I saw it. It's terrible. Coppola made that?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
He's got to get that money to make the Megalopolises,
No, that movie was so bad.
Yeah, it's not good. But that's the energy that Gary Cooper, who I adore. I want to be clear.
I don't know if they actually shot there. Shooting at Columbia has a very, very long approval process, which is one of the reasons why if you see something that's supposed to be Columbia on TV, it's nearly always City College. Also, City College and Pace also standing in for Hudson University on Law and Order.
I'm obsessed with Hudson University. Fordham has also stood in for it.
There was that Scouting New York article like 15 years ago where it was a spoof thing for either Halloween or April Fools, where they were talking about Hudson University, the school where everyone mysteriously keeps dying, or trying to figure out where in New York is Hudson University supposed to be.
Yes, I remember that. And the article went on about the various styles of construction at the school. Like, yeah, totally obsessed with Hudson University. And yeah, I was like, are you kidding me, movie? He drops out of school to sign up to play professional baseball to pay for his mother's hospitalization. And then he lies to his mother and says that he's going to Harvard instead of Hartford, Connecticut.
He says Hartford and she mishears it as Harvard. Again, her hearing is going awfully quickly, but
for a 40-year-old woman, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's an untold story that on top of the ALS gene, they all had rapid aging syndrome, like in that movie Jack with Robin Williams, and that's why she looks 70 when she's 32, and why her kid looks 42 by the time he's 20.
The tragic dimensions of genetic disease are documented both subtly and broadly in this film. And in all seriousness, though, there's a real thing with hearing and hearing loss with women of that age range, because they used to, when you had an ear infection, they used to lance your ears to drain them. Yeah. Yeah, that's my grandmother had that. Growing up.
Awful.
Yeah, and so her hearing was super bad by the end.
Yeah.
So
he joined Yay Medicine, him, and they managed to get a decent performance out of him as himself. Sort of like I've seen examples of Babe Ruth doing terrible acting elsewhere. This is pretty good as it goes when it comes to trying to get a performance out of Babe Ruth playing Babe Ruth.
However, I was like, are you kidding me, movie? Are you kidding me? All the people playing themselves in this.
I think that for the audience at the time, where they were all major baseball fans and it was America's pastime and it was a less cynical... I'm not going to say it was a less cynical era, because I don't get how... And we also produce sentimental, treacly stuff now.
Yeah.
But one of the things I did to prep for this was I watched the 4th episode of the Ken Burns baseball series to get my head acclimated to the times, and it helped reduce my acting expectations of Babe Ruth.
Well, Babe Ruth was kind of a terrible person, right?
Yeah, there was stuff where his wife had a nervous breakdown because he was cheating on her. And then the cameras followed him into the hospital room, and there's this shot of her where she looks wrecked and he's sitting there with his face in his hands. And it's like, what is a newspaper person doing in this hospital room?
I mean, they let Walter Brennan come everywhere with them.
I think he's supposed to be at the Mayo Clinic but they don't actually say the name of the disease. He says, "Oh, it has a name so long, I'll be cured by the time I can pronounce it." So they don't say... There are things where I think they're depending to the audience at the time. Them explaining it would have been didactic because everybody knew the story.
Yeah. It is weird that they don't even say it, though, because they could just say ALS. They don't have to say the whole thing. It's like, did ALS have a lobby in Hollywood where they were like, keep our name out of your mouth movies?
Or, yeah, I think in real life, if they'd wanted to milk having moving scenes, when Lou Gehrig came into the dugout and explained what he had and how it was going to break him down, he had teammates who started crying. And my best guess for not reproducing this scene just to keep up the tear jerking that really won me over to this film. And I don't think that method necessarily made anyone a better actor. It's just that the styles changed. So I think that to properly appreciate black and white film acting, you have to go into a run of watching at least several black and white movies and then just do it as a marathon, because we're it's a different filmic language. But
and also, he
is so good in these scenes of him reacting to what the hell is happening to my... And then when I thought about how much lower this generation's expectations on honeymoons were, I guess back then the bride was usually a virgin, so it was just about getting her to a hotel. Well, what we saw in Coal Miner's Daughter, they just go to the motel. But it was just you went upstate to a lake place for a few days, and now it's something where you don't do it right after the wedding. You wait 2 years, but then you go to Greece for 2 weeks. It's a big deal. I'm sort of just sort of whoa, at how much lower that generation's expectation on honeymoons was.
Yeah. Yeah, and also she,
and I wrote down scores for this that I can't defend after talking to you for the last hour and a half.
Oh no, as I said, I'm a monster. Don't pay attention to me. I'm a broken person who is hateful. You should not be influenced by what a broken, hateful person I am. I mean, I guess
I'm not going to debate with you that you're a broken, hateful person.
Don't debate me. I was trying to think of other less Passion of the Christ analogs, and I was reminded of a movie that I still have not gotten the courage together to see, which is Flight 93, the Paul Greengrass movie about the final flight in on 9/11 that was grounded in Pennsylvania. And they did a lot of casting of real people, like the air traffic controllers and things like that, and the people on the ground, the crew and everything. And I've been made to understand that adds a level of painful resonance to it that makes like it even more immediate. And like, while these are very different sad stories, I'm just wondering, like, were the wounds too fresh with Lou Gehrig to make a movie that like properly addressed who he was? Because I also, like, as I said in the Reagan episode, and I said it again in Gandhi, like, I don't want to see that kind of movie about anyone because it's not interesting. And the last 15 minutes of this are interesting because you see him actually dealing with challenging situations and how he responds to them. Some of the casting was just dubious to me, like his parents as one example, the elderly men in his fraternity, like all of that. I was like, what are we doing? But yeah, the acting, like I don't have any beef with the acting. Like, I mean, his parents were a little broad. Like they had like Mr. and Mrs. Costanza energy at points and looked about as old as them, at least. But yeah, I mean, no issue with the acting. The casting was just whack, though. It gets that I didn't care for it.
Yeah, it didn't. I don't think anything they said sounded like a person never said this in their life, or even when it was something where we are too cynical to expect anyone to believe a script like this now. There was nothing that made me sit and go, wow, they said that with a straight face.
It's such a ridiculous remark. I was laughing at myself before I even finished it. Like, I was like, there's nothing I hate more than, and it's like, ugh. But anyway, yeah, I didn't like that. I didn't, there were just some things I didn't like, but I'm a dick.
That sounds like a Baltimore thing, because do you remember there was that year when the Baltimore football team was in the Super Bowl and the power went out in the stadium? It was one of the times Beyonce was the halftime player.
Oh, yes,
and I was like, Omar done it.
Yeah, it's all that corruption down at the docks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pablo Schreiber and Frank and everybody else in the docks season, because that was all about unions. I don't know.
That was the second weakest season, and then they came back strong in the third.
I have a weird love for season 2. I know it's not, it's really like, it goes like way off course, but I do kind of, I have like a kind of love for it, just because it's like all of this stuff comes down for like just the stupidest like infighting among the cops and the dock workers. And I don't know, I found it like a fascinating season, but it is such a massive digression from like the stuff that's actually going on a day-to-day basis on that show. Although it is very disconcerting to see him. My Lord and Savior Marty Scorsese made The Irishman a few years ago, and that has a lot of like de-aging in it. We haven't figured out how to do that, and I think the answer is we shouldn't.
Well, with the de-aging in that, even where they said that, oh, we can de-age, the problem was that they would be filming scenes where they'd get to the end and Marty would say, Bobby, your delivery was great, but you're still moving like a 70-year-old man. I need you to move like a 35-year-old man. So they had to keep retaking it while Bobby De Niro has to like correct for all of the little things that change in how you move, where you're compensating for little aches and pains to try to move like a 35-year-old. And Marty had all the people on set yell out what age he looked going backward, like 60, 50, until he finally gave a take where he managed to do the delivery and move like a 35-year-old.
Yeah, he never pulls it off.
Yeah. And it's also a thing where the de-aging is so expensive to do still. Like, I think it's something like well into 6 figures per frame. But it's also when you have an actor where we have an image in our hearts of them at a younger age, and you're comparing that against, you can't just like map the features backwards because we have an image in our minds of them then, but you can't do that and then animate. There's like an art to it that like, and yeah, this is something that happens in Marvel movies because there's a de-aged Robert Downey Jr. at the beginning of Civil War, where we know what he looked like when he was 18 and 21. And they de-age Michael Douglas and Michelle Pfeiffer in the Ant-Man movies.
I mean, it's all like that line from Jurassic Park of, you were so preoccupied with whether or not you could, you didn't stop to think if you should. We just shouldn't. Like, hire younger actors. It's so distracting to see people like pretending to be young while looking old, or seeing them looking old but having like a lineless face. Remember that piece of Italian art that woman went in and painted over?
Oh, yeah.
Like, everybody looks like that with the de-aging software.
I don't know.
She's a real victim of the film industry and of like there just being no lifeguard on duty to protect her and protect her interests and to help her set boundaries, because she didn't know that she needed to do any of that and didn't know how to advocate for herself because she was a child on the set of this movie.
Are there any other Jean Seberg films between Breathless and her death that were notable for how she stays a star? Because I've seen the biopic Seberg with Kay Stu, where they go into that she has burns on her belly, and he asks her, how did this happen? And she said, someone lit a fire under me. And I know from that movie that she was in Paint Your Wagon, which I have not seen. I know it from the Simpsons parody, where it has the song, gonna paint your wagon, gonna paint it good. We ain't bragging, we're gonna coat that wood. But I haven't actually seen it. So what else in her oeuvre kept her a star?
Couple of things. So we talked about Bonjour Tristesse, which was a middling movie. There's a movie called The Mouse That Roared that she made with Peter Sellers immediately after that. Breathless, obviously. There's a movie that she made with Warren Beatty called Lilith, in which she plays a schizophrenic, and she's very good in that. You just mentioned Paint Your Wagon, and also she was in Airport, the very first disaster movie, and then she was in several like really small weird little movies, TV movies, things like that throughout the 70s, but never quite landed a big American picture again after Airplane. So she spent most of the 70s living in France. She had some really messy personal life stuff involving her second husband and then her third husband. There was a lot of like personal messiness happening in her life too. But she spent most of the 70s in France up until her death.
And he sounds like an awful man to work with, but I sort of love him for a scene in Tom Wolfe's Radical Chic, and ask me to bring that up at the end when we do our recommendations.
I think it's fair to describe Otto Preminger as a monster. Noted, like, mean bully of female actors, Otto Preminger.
I guess the thing that I love him for is there's this moment in Radical Chic where Leonard and Felicia Bernstein threw a party for the Black Panthers. Otto Preminger asks, do you think it is right for a Jew being persecuted in the Soviet Union to go live in Israel? And the Black Panthers are already, I mean, you've seen what's happened. Like, I sort of love him for fucking up their party with that question and not caring.
This is probably a conversation for another show.
Yeah.
But
yes,
I would say that a lot of celebrities, and Gene is included in this, got tangled up in some of this political machinery involving the Black Panthers in the late 60s and early 70s. The impression that I get from understanding Gene Seberg's experience with them is that like with any organization, they weren't necessarily always on the up and up. Which is a thing that's a thing that happens like anytime you get involved and get in over your head with messy politics because you didn't have a freshman year at college where you did that in privacy. I think like we see that with a lot of actors. Like Sean Penn would be my like platonic ideal of someone who didn't go to college and is constantly living in freshman year politics to this day. And I think that happened a lot. Like Jane Fonda, who I also adore. No one told her not to sit on that fucking tank, you know? It seemed like a good idea at the time. There's a messy idealism at the core of some of this stuff. As I said, like not everybody in an organization is always on the up and up. Black Panthers, amazing cause. School breakfasts, amazing. The fact that they got gun control introduced in California, amazing.
Inadvertently.
I would love it if they would do that again. They did a lot of amazing things as militants. However, you know.
But I love Otto Preminger for that moment where he doesn't care if all the other elites at the party think he's not cool anymore. He sticks up for the Jews as a minority.
Yes.
When so many of us have been afraid to do that because we know we're not going to get invited out by the cool kids anymore.
And he had a leg to stand on when it came to shit like that too, because he was born in Austria-Hungary, as it was once known. Like, homie saw some shit, you know?
Let's talk about St. Joan. Okay. Where the fuck were we, Sarah?
Good question. So where were we? I was saying that my controversial hot take is that she's actually, I think, very good in this. And I think that she was unfairly maligned. And also, as I mentioned to you before we started recording, I think that I need to bake into our recording schedule like a 24-hour cooling off period for me after I watch a movie. Because like where I was with this the night that I watched it, and I watched it the way the Lord intended it to be watched, which was on YouTube on my television, because it seemed like all the streaming services have erased this film from existence, at least for the time being. I was kind of like, I was up here with it. Like I was really annoyed by a lot of things. And the more I reflected on it, the more I kind of appreciated and like found myself really like thinking about a lot of the things that we saw in it and real. Maybe it's just the times that we're in, but watching her on trial, like I was reminded of like Christine Blasey Ford and Anita Hill and Hillary Clinton testifying again and again and again about Benghazi, and all of the times that women have tried to share their truth and a bunch of men have been like, that's not what happened and you're wrong, and now we're going to set you on fire in the yard.
George Bernard Shaw is on a short list of English writers to have an adjective derived from their name, which includes Shakespearean, Dickensian, Orwellian, and Shavian. And Shaw has slipped to fourth place on that list. Sort of like when in I, Tonya, Margot Robbie as Tonya Harding says, when you come in fourth at the Olympics, nobody cares. So I sort of imagine George Bernard Shaw and Tonya Harding waiting tables at a diner, at the Twin Peaks diner together in the little diner waitress's uniform somewhere in the diner at the back of my brain.
I would object to your characterization of no one cares if you come in fourth, because as you may recall, we watched a little movie called Prefontaine. And if it's a white dude, we care very much about him coming in fourth. We're going to make a whole 2 movies about it. But yes, I see your point. For most of us, coming in fourth means that no one remembers you.
Yes, but Shavian, until Orwellian took third place, it was an adjective to describe a certain sort of worldview and manner of speech.
Yeah, I really like the way that they played with this. I feel like
work. And even if I feel like, no, this doesn't really work, it needs to be seen live. And there are observations to be made about the shift in how we see history, because the 2 major Henry V movies are all done so that we're rooting for him, even though his pretext for invading France feels so like there's a reason why in both the Olivier and the Branagh versions, they do that as a thing at the Globe Theatre, because it's so boring to hear them explain Salic law and the descent from Edward III and what's going on here. But where both, like, we go from having this portrayal where everybody loves the St. Crispin's Day speech in Henry V to rooting against the English because Joan wants to depose his infant son from the throne of France. Henry VI is a little boy at this point. He became a king at the age of 1. I'm going to cut myself saying this because I hate poop humor, but Henry V died of dysentery.
Everybody's got to die some way. You know,
he
that could have been
himself to death. That's what dysentery is. You poop yourself to death.
Oh, yes. I remember from Oregon Trail. Yeah. That sucks. That is a shitty way to go. I'll see myself out. I hate myself for saying that.
That's why I'm gonna cut that. But that audiences in multiple generations have, what was I talking about? Why I don't want to do any of the Shakespeare films, because it's Shakespeare. How can I possibly give a low grade to Shakespeare?
Have you seen Saved? The movie with, it's Mandy Moore and Jenna Malone. It's 20 years old.
No.
It's amazing. It's really funny. She reminds me a little bit of Mandy Moore in that is sort of like, she's like, I am on fire for the Lord. You are going to give me an army. And they all kind of just are like, okay, you know what? Let's get her out of here and like give her the army, whatever. And
England, when the Wars of the Roses, and Henry VI is a Lancastrian, and the Lancastrians eventually win because Henry VII is descended from them through his mother, who's descended through a bastard. And he doesn't even have the most legit claim. It's just that he wins Bosworth Field, and everyone is sick of the Wars of the Roses. Henry VI, one of his points when he's not catatonic, thinks that this is how to fix all of his political problems, is to have Love Day and have his and have the people in the Yorkist and Lancastrian political factions take a walk through London that everyone sees, a holy walk where they hold hands with the people they've been fighting with.
Like, do you remember the episode of Seinfeld where Elaine was dating the guy who worked for Dinkins and she suggested the name tag idea to him? And, oh, okay. Basically, it was like everyone in the city should have a name tag on. And it on Seinfeld sunk Dinkins's campaign, but that's like what that sounds like. That's insane.
Yeah. It also created major problems for his wife, Marguerite of Anjou, because he wanted to be holy, and at their wedding, the priest gives a big speech about sin. She doesn't get pregnant for like years and years and years and years and years, and it's thought it's because he wanted to be chaste, and this bishop at the wedding really fucked shit up by stressing that on a night where, no, he needs to go mount her like a stallion. It's their job to make babies because, also his uncles wind up not having children. So at any rate, Marguerite somehow contrives to have a kid by him, Prince Edward, who will die in battle at the age of 16. But he had been catatonic for a bunch of the time when he meets his son when he's a year old, and he's just been like for a year, and then she's like, yes, this is your baby. Like, he would periodically come to and then have fabulous ideas like the Love Parade. So, but this is rather similar to, but what Charles VI has is similar, but with episodes of violence.
I mean, I feel like there's a strong possibility that Edward was conceived outside of the boundaries of consent, but for a change.
Or he could have been illegitimate. That's
that too.
Like, but of course, like, women are accused. Like Marguerite of Anjou has to do everything to hold the kingdom together herself because her husband is a catatonic simpleton, and like, she doesn't necessarily have the skills for that. Where throne, and he's talking about all these reasons it's impractical. And there's one point where he says, "I want to," but to illustrate, yes, his father was nuts and completely messed up France, and his father and mother signed this contract saying that his cousin, because they're all cousins, Henry V would become the next king of France, not Charles, who was never supposed to be. The Dauphin is the French equivalent of the Prince of Wales, who was never supposed to be in this spot. He is like all nervous. There's one point where he asks her, "Do you know any Jews?" As in moneylenders. I don't know if this is one of the points where the Jews were kicked out of France.
I mean, probably. If it wasn't happening, it was about to happen, or it had just happened.
Yeah. One of the Philips about a century earlier kicked them out. Another Philip invited us back in. Yeah. Don't buy any real estate, even if you're allowed to, as a medieval Jew.
It's good advice. It's very good advice.
I also went down a huge rabbit hole about the Burgundians, because they're the ones who capture Joan and sell her to the English. But since this never touched on who are the Burgundians, I'll leave that for another time.
And that's real, and she's refusing to say, like, the church is more powerful than the voice of God, which is a real thing with the Catholic Church, where there's someone who talks to God directly, and that is the Pope. But people do not talk directly to God. Pope is the voice of God on earth. And so it is heresy, but like it's also stupid. Like it's also nonsense.
Yes. The YouTube free version that I watched was grainy, and I was unsure as to whether the problem was that I was watching a YouTube pirated version that no one had bothered taking down, or if there was a sharper print somewhere. But where was I? I wanted to get that comment in there, and it's kind of a non sequitur at this point. How do I tie that back in? I don't know, Sarah.
Like, you know, just it feels like a weird passion project, like where just who is it for? I don't know. It's just it's a strange movie. I'm glad we have it, but it's so peculiar. I don't know how else to describe it. It's just like a very like what are we doing kind of movie.
I often feel like nobody making these movies about ancient ages has the same as much passion as I do about the stories from then. And like at the same time that Shaw has made this very forward thinking point about how where we see that Joan is a woman and nobody wants to listen to her, and there were other women around at the, like Charles's mother-in-law brought her in for Charles's mother-in-law made a choice to let her in, Yolande of Aragon, because Yolande says, I did not marry my daughter off to this prince for us to just accept when the King of England when the baby King of England becomes king here. I guess all of that is tangential to Joan. And it's, again, how can I possibly complain about Shaw's choices when it's George Bernard Shaw? It's the same reason we can't do a Shakespeare thing, because if that's the name on the screen,
messy.
They are. And some of this, I guess I know these stories from having like gone, and it's all been made into Philippa Gregory novels and Stars series, but a lot of it does hew quite closely to what actually happened. And we can't do the Stars series because they don't really fit our structure. But yeah, these people are messy AF.
Yeah.
Well, that reminds
that Shaw
me
guy, he's going places, you know?
Yeah, that reminds me of time for my Dragon Show reference. Ned Stark's line about it is only when a man is afraid that he can be truly brave.
I mean, true bravery is not fearlessness. It is seeing the fear and doing it anyway.
Yeah.
And with that, should we do we have any additional choice dialogue before we talk about how we score our episodes and our movies?
I admired lots of bits of dialogue, but that was the only thing where I paused to write it down because I was cooking and washing dishes while I was watching this. And I did wind up watching it twice, but I had a lot of cooking and dishwashing to do last night.
You must have. Also, I failed to mention this when we were talking about the opening credits. These are Saul Bass credits.
Who is Saul Bass?
He is a very famous designer of art, but really familiar. He designed a lot of opening credits. Really iconic look and feel to the way that he designed opening credit sequences. Did Anatomy of a Murder. He did a bunch of premongers. So he did Anatomy of a Murder. He did Man with the Golden Arm. He did Vertigo. I'm trying to think of some others that I know he did off the top. Yeah, he was a graphic designer who really kind of created a really like wonderful look and feel to opening credit sequences into film posters. He did the Shining poster. He did Exodus. He did I'm just looking at some. Yeah, he did a lot with premature, the West Side Story film poster. He did the opening credits to Casino.
Oh.
Yeah, really prolific. Really cool look to his work.
And the scenes where they're outside just feel like these scenes where they're outside and on horses feel like kind of tacked in, like, oh yeah, we're making a movie, let's do something, but like they're not a part of the thing. And even when they're supposed to be outside in actual scenes, it feels like a stage. It was barely adapted from stage to screen. It feels like a filmed play. So the quality of the script rating is blasphemous because it's George Bernard Shaw. It's that the adaptation is barely an adaptation.
Gosh, just as a reminder, we
know.
do not compare scores before we do this.
No. Wow, we're like an old married couple.
We are. We'll go back to fighting about stuff next week, I'm sure.
What's next? Oh, next week is next week Ray?
Yeah.
Yes, next week is Ray, which I wanted to get in Ray and Walk the Line before the April Fool's episode on Dewey Cox, since those are the films that Dewey Cox references the most. So I wanted to make sure they were in relatively recently in the rearview mirror, both of them. Yeah, I gave it a 4 for accuracy. And this was a case where I did a bunch of reading and listening to podcasts, and this is sort of like a way, Otto Preminger being an asshole on set, even though he did make some great films, is also a production direction decision.
Yeah.
But the overall, like, the casting, it's an around the board reflection. The casting is excellent. And there were a bunch of devices that sort of like grabbed me and kept me watching. But it looks stagey and the screenplay is barely an adaptation. Yeah. Fun costumes, decent performances, a little weird on the exit. Like, not weird, you know, we'll probably wind up giving it a low 6 or a high 5 when we watch it. It's cool. Decent enough. Yeah, Maestro could be Oscar-bation. Somehow I don't think Maestro is closely related to the Radical Chic. I read it over 20 years ago. I got through it in like a few hours. Quite illuminating. I found it to be.
Bradley Cooper is like the John Holmes of Oscar-bation. He wants that prize so damn bad. God bless. He's very talented, but like, chill. We get it. You want an Oscar.
Yeah, my favorite Bradley Cooper is as the voice of Rocket Raccoon.
That is a fun performance. You know what I loved him in? And this is all going right on the cutting room floor. I loved him in Nightmare Alley.
I did not see that.
See that? Oh, it's a great ride. There's so many great performances in that, and it's Del Toro, and it's like gorgeous and gothic and weird and amazing looking. Yeah, do more of that. Relax, guy. You'll get your prize. Just have it. Just chill. He must have been. I don't think you can be. I don't think like you can really be like a good artist unless you are a good listener, you know, and certainly not a writer if you're not listening to people all the time. But I could also be wrong about that.
Well, that was the 12th edition of Irrelevant Host Banter, because there's very little that I can bear to let permanently die on the cutting room floor. If you're receiving this episode in August of 2025, we are on hiatus for regular episodes until September 2nd of 2025. If you liked the show, please leave us a 5-star rating and subscribe to us on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and tell a friend, or better yet, plural friends, and share us on social media. We hear it helps. You can follow us on Instagram, where we have visual aids from our episodes. Our Instagram handle is @BiopicAPodcastStory. We also have accounts on Threads and Blue Sky. Please check out our webpage at biopicapodcaststory.podbean.com to see the official episode ratings for all of the movies that we've done so far. If you would like to get in touch, you can email us at biopiclistenermailbag@gmail.com. Our theme music is by Ben. The intro is his song Sleater Cannonball, and the outro is Spring Breakers, and you can check him out on Spotify, which we will link to in the show notes. Have an excellent week or weekend, and we hope you'll listen in when our regular episodes drop on Tuesdays.